Hey, Jen and Sean, thanks for joining, and Karen too. So, welcome to our webinar today. The title of this webinar and the subject is Code Your Way, from Sam Space to Sam Blockley to Sam Script. Like I mentioned earlier, are you guys seeing my correct screen, by the way, with the presentation? Okay, perfect, thank you. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, my name is Alyssa Ems. I am our Customer Success Manager here for the Midwest at Sam Labs. If I haven't met you, it's because I mainly support our schools up here in the Midwest and then on down to Oklahoma. Before coming to Sam Labs in November 2023, I was a classroom teacher for 9 years. I taught pre-K in Houston, Texas for 5, and then 4 more years in kindergarten up in Wisconsin, where I'm currently based. And yeah, I've been with Sam Labs since November 2023. Today, the goal of the session, or today we have 3 objectives in the session. We'll start off by experiencing the progression of coding in Sam Labs, from Sam Space to Sam Blockley to Sam Script. Then we'll jump into practice building and modifying some programs so that you get practice in all 3 platforms. And after that, we'll identify the platform that best fits your grade level and your classroom's goals so that you can help take students to the next step in their coding journey. Before I jump in, I'm going to introduce a poll in here just to get some information from y'all. If you could tell me by clicking into that poll that should have just popped up on your screen, I'm curious to know which platform you are most familiar with. Maybe it's Sam Space or Sam Blockley or Sam Script, or maybe you're new to everything, and that's fine too. Thanks to those of you who clicked that so far. It looks like most of us are familiar with Sam Space for the most part, which is very typical for Sam Labs, right? We start almost everybody out in Sam Space, and we spend the most time during our trainings talking about Sam Space. So my kind of gut feeling today was that we were going to start by giving an overview of Sam Space, but then really spend most of our time learning how to level up into Sam Blockley and Sam Script. Thanks everybody for filling that out for me. And if you were curious, those are the results as well. I mentioned that I'm the customer success manager for the Midwest here. We also have other customer success managers that are based in other parts of the country. So you can see that yellow area is covered by me, but we've got Joel over in the Pacific Northwest in California, Melinda over in Southern California, and the West or Southwest for us. We've got Lauren in the Northeast, and then currently our Director of Customer Success, Mackenzie, is supporting in the Southeast. So if you have not met your customer success manager yet, their information's on this slide, but we can always have them reach out to you as well. Like I mentioned today, we're going to go ahead and jump into talking about coding your way with Sam Space, Sam Blockley, and Sam Script. As I talk, you are welcome to, let's see if I can find my mouse. You are welcome to jump in the chat and ask any questions. You're also welcome to come off of mute and interrupt me and ask any questions at that time too. I'll try to pay attention to the chat and the video and the presentation, and we'll make today work. The other thing to know about this session is if you stay the whole time and you fill out a survey for us, you will get sent a Root Light robot. So if you attend at least one session live, you'll get one Root Light robot plus a coding mat sent to your school. So make sure to stick around to fill out that survey at the end. And we'll also end up with a Q&A today. That one person. Hey, Marty, I see you're just popping in. Perfect timing. We're about to get started. So the first thing that we'll talk about is just experiencing the progression of Sam Studio's coding platforms. Like you guys put in the poll, most of you are familiar with our first coding platform, Sam Space, but maybe haven't had much practice or much experience with Sam Blockley or Sam Script. At Sam Labs, we are a K through 8th grade seed coding company, so we have platforms that are accessible for our youngest learners that are just 4 and 5 years old in kindergarten, all the way up through 8th graders and beyond who are ready for script-based coding in JavaScript and Python. We start all kiddos out in Sam Space to expose them to coding concepts and language without overwhelming them with the specific language of coding. It's very visual and very intuitive. After we work with kids in Sam Space, we want to start them in Sam Blockly, maybe in upper elementary or even middle school. If you are familiar with coding platforms like code.org or Scratch, Sam Blockly will look very familiar to you, and it might not be brand new to your students either, because they may have done some of those other platforms before as well. Sam Blockly is what we call block-based coding. It's about engaging and exciting students into actually learning the language of code that's more traditional and more foundational to further learning as they progress in those computer science courses. And then our third platform, Sam Script, is used for us in middle school, 6th through 8th grade or above that. We have some students in high school working in Sam Script. It really combines that block-based code in Sam Blockly with a more advanced script-based code in both JavaScript and Python. And students explore that through our middle school course, where they're also exploring different STEAM careers and future-ready skills. Generally, if you are teaching elementary, if you're teaching K-3, you'll most likely stick around Sam Space. If you're teaching between 3rd grade and 8th grade, you might explore Sam Blockly with students. And then if you are a middle school only teacher, you will explore Sam Script with students. This is just a bit of background information for us, right? Sam Space is that simple flow-based coding that's designed for all students and all ability levels. For us here at Sam Labs, Sam Space is used in almost every course we have. It's in our K-5 STEAM course, our new interactive STEAM course that's launching tomorrow, by the way, our Creators STEAM course, which is kind of a little known course that uses Sam Labs blocks and coding platforms, plus an extra material called Strawbees. And it's also used in our middle school STEAM lessons. So we're basically starting all kids out with Sam Space. The system that I have on here is one that we're going to build in a moment. If you've went through any Sam Labs training, you've probably built this system before. It's a smart light. I should have led with this, but we're going to start today by me sharing some information, and then it will move more into a workshop type scenario where you're doing some hands-on coding. So don't worry, I'm not going to talk at you the whole time. Sam Blockly is that middle coding platform for us. It's using block-based coding, and for Sam Labs purposes, it's used mostly in our 4th through 8th grade Learn to Code course and our Creators coding course, which again is another one of those little known courses. If you haven't checked it out, it uses some of your Sam Labs blocks, your motors especially, plus Lego Technic pieces. So that's a fun course to check out if you want to know more about block-based coding. And something new for us, our 3rd through 5th grade interactive STEAM lessons that are going to be released tomorrow will have the option to use Sam Blockly. So whereas our traditional K-5 course didn't introduce Sam Blockly at all to students, they'll see it as part of the 3rd through 5th grade course as an option. And then Sam Script, our 3rd coding platform, allows coding in 3 different languages: Block, JavaScript, and Python. This platform is really advanced. It lets you toggle back and forth between a block code and a script code so that students can start analyzing it. They're not necessarily going to leave our middle school course with the skills to code fully in JavaScript and Python. But the way the platform works is that it's designed to give them a view of all 3 platforms so that they can easily tell the difference between JavaScript, Python, and blocks, and so that they can start coding in the script if they're ready for it. It's also very scaffolded and self-correcting, so it's a great starter to script-based coding for kids. And the Sam Script is used in our middle school STEAM course in Unit 1 as an introduction, and then in Unit 6 through 10. The fun thing about Sam Labs is that you can do the same systems across multiple platforms. So I'm going to show you, and if you'd like, you can follow along with me, how to build a very simple system, a smart light, in all 3 coding platforms. You do not have to follow along with me. You are welcome to just watch, and that's okay too. I'm going to have you do some hands-on bits in a second though. Oh, of course I got logged out. That's helpful. So the first code that I wanted to show you was that smart lighting system inside of Sam Space. When we click create new and open a new Sam Space project, you'll notice that there are blocks down at the bottom of our screen. There are very few words. The only words on this screen are labels that help students find the blocks that they're looking for. The system that I'm going to talk about is a smart light. So it's basically a street light outside of your house, a light that turns on when it gets dark, maybe like a night light even. To build a smart light in Sam Space, Sam Blockly, and Sam Script, the only blocks that we need are an RGB LED and a light sensor. So onto my screen, I'm going to go under my inputs, grab a light sensor and pull it up. And then under outputs, I'm going to grab an RGB LED. Now that I have my input and my output, in Sam Script, in Sam Space, we're talking about flow-based coding. So we want to see a line flow between the input and the output. To do that, we just take our little blue dot here, connect it to our RGB LED, and now, as the light sensor senses more light in this simulation, our RGB LED light gets brighter. At this point in the lesson is what we call that debug, right? It's where students have to intentionally fix something that's not quite right. In this case, we're thinking about a street light outside of our house. Right now, what's happening is as it's getting brighter outside, our RGB LED or our street light is getting brighter. We don't want that to happen. We only want our light to turn on when it's getting dark. So what we can do is add different behaviors that change the logic. So we're still talking with kids about logic in Sam Space. We're just doing it in a very student-friendly way. To do that, we add a behavior. If we click under behaviors and go to numbers, we find this behavior that comes in handy a lot and translates across all three platforms. It's called the compare block. We can take that compare block. To find that, I went to behaviors and to numbers, and it's right here in the middle. If I drag and drop this into my code, right now it says when the level of light is exactly 60, turn on my RGB LED. And remember, that's not quite what I want, right? I want my RGB LED to come on when it's dark outside. So I have to think, what would I change this compare block to simulate darkness? And in this case, I'm going to say it'll be dark when the level of light is less than 25. So I will click my compare block, change that to a less than, and drag this down to 25. Now, you can see that my light sensor level's up here in the 90s, and my RGB LED is off. But when I drag this down below 25, my RGB LED turns on. If I were to connect my blocks, and I'll just do that quickly here. If I were to connect my blocks, I'll use the pairing ID for this light sensor. It's 5873. So I've got my RGB LED connected and my light sensor connected. Now that they're both connected, I can put them in this little red stand, and then I have a street light. As the sun goes down, my light turns on, and as it gets brighter, I'm going to turn on my flashlight on my phone. As it gets brighter, my RGB LED will turn off. As the sun goes away, my light turns on. This is a pretty simplistic code inside of Sam Space. In fact, it's one of the first codes that your kids will kind of practice with. And it really comes from a second grade lesson called the Smart Lighting System. But in here, students are already being exposed to that logic. If my level of light is less than 25, turn on my RGB LED. We can expose them to the same logic inside of Sam Blockly. If I save this as a street light and go back to my home screen, I can then open this same exact project, but in Sam Blockly. Here, we have the same exact thing happening, but it looks a lot different because we're introducing blocks. Blocks are basically puzzle pieces that students will click together to build a code. Our block-based code always will start in Sam Blockly almost always with a program start block. There are other types of start blocks that we find under general, like we can start when an arrow is pressed or when a space bar is pressed. So yeah, typically your system will start with either when this key is pressed, which is the same as that key press button in Sam Space, or a program start. One thing that's kind of unique to, it's not unique to Sam Blockly and Sam Script, but it's not a part of Sam Space, are loops. In this system, we have to tell our system to keep going. So almost every system that you build inside of Sam Blockly and Sam Script will have some sort of start button, start block, and a loop. They're color-coded. The loops will always be orange, and it's just going to tell your project how many times to repeat. We want this logic to keep happening forever. So that's why I use the repeat forever do. Then we get a logic statement. If I click logic, there are all sorts of if-then statements. Notice in the same space, we were also using those if-then statements. We said if the level of light, and I'm trying to pull that up now while multitasking. We said if our level of light is less than 25, then turn on my RGB LED. We already know the logic. Kids already know the logic. We just want them to put it into words using Sam Blockly. So that's when we pull our logic loop, our logic statement here that says if, do, else. Side note, something to remember about Sam Blockly is if they pull in the wrong logic statement, they can always change it by clicking this little blue setting. I'll pull this down so you can see. But let's say I forgot to add in my else, or I wanted to add an else if, like two different options. These are editable by clicking that little blue setting bar. Remembering that our logic is if our light sensor senses a level of light that's less than 25, that's what we need to add here. If our light sensor senses a value that is less than 25, we can find that same compare block under our logic and plop it in here. It was a behavior in Sam Space. Now it's a logic block. If, and then we have our sentence stem. We can change that equal to a less than sign. And we can say if our level of light is less than 25. Where would we find a level of light? Well, for our light sensor? Well, let's look in our menu here. If you're adding blocks for the first time, I'm going to remove these and show you how to add blocks. It's not letting me remove them from my project right now because I already have them in over here. But to add blocks inside of Sam Blockly, you click the devices button and then a device menu will pop up. If you already added one device and want to add more, you just click devices again and click the button that says add device at the bottom. And this is how you select which Sam block you want to add in. So it's different from Sam Space, right? Where you just are dragging and dropping blocks. Here, if I want to add a DC motor, I would select DC motor. I could add another RGB LED, then whichever blocks I wanted, even a micro bit. Or if you have vernier sensors at your school, you can also add in some vernier sensors. Let's say I wanted to add a buzzer. Now I could see it over here on the right side of my screen. But I don't need a buzzer. But after I add light sensor, now I get a light sensor menu. If I click that light sensor menu, I want to find the value of the light sensor. So I'll click values. If my light sensor value is less than 25, where would I find 25? Well, 25 is a number, so I'm going to go under math. Here's a number block that we can drag in. So now we're using puzzle pieces instead of just adding the code in with the drag and drop blocks. But this is the same exact thing that's happening here. If our light sensor value is less than 25, what do we want to happen? Well, we want our RGB LED to turn on. So I can go under my RGB LED light and drag in what I want to happen. I want my RGB LED to get brighter. Maybe I want it to light up at 100% brightness. I can also choose the color I want to set it to. Maybe I want my RGB LED to light up red. or yellow. I can change that color by clicking here. The other important thing about sandblockly is that you have to add an else. So you have to tell your system what to do if it's not following this logic. So if this logic's not true, I just want my RGB LED to be off. So I can come here, right click and duplicate this block, and then set it to 0, because if the brightness is 0, my RGB LED is off. I can do the same exact thing here that I could in Sam Space. There's adding extra steps and extra language. The other important thing to know about Blockly is that you have to click run. It's not just going to work right away in your simulator over here. First, you have to press run. And now we can see my light sensors over here on the right. It's above 25, so my RGB LED is off. If I pull below 25, my RGB LED turns on and it's yellow. Above 25, my light is off. Now it's on. We just looked at the same system in both Sam Space and Sam Blockly. Before I show you what the system looks like in Sam Script and we do a bit of hands-on practice, does anybody have any questions about Sam Blockly specifically? If you do, you can come off of mute or you can ask them in the chat. I'm seeing some head nods, not seeing any questions. Feel free though, if you do have a question that pops up, to add it in. Another thing to know about Sam Blockly is that you can change the color of your blocks, of the outside of your blocks. Not really important, but like each student group, if I wanted to connect my light sensor here, each student group could change to a different color block. So like now the outside of my block is red. Now the outside of my block is purple. And that can help kids by clicking up here. It can help them keep their blocks separate. It's especially helpful if they're like building a car or something and they're going to drive it around the room and they might lose it. I just always like to point that out. And one other thing to point out is that they can see the console here too if they're going to print something, if they use a print block under text. But that's only really relevant if they're using the print block. Otherwise, we can see our code here. Oops, sorry. And again, this will auto-save as well, so it'll be right here. I also want to show you what that same smart light looks like in Sam Blockly. I'm not going to walk you through building it from scratch right now because I want us to have time for some hands-on practice. But I do want to show you that Sam Blockly starts out remarkably similar to Sam Script starts out remarkably similar to Sam Blockly. Here, we've got our on start at the beginning. That's the same as our program start in Sam Blockly. Then I'm telling it what to do. I'm saying on start, set. This is the difference here. I have to first add in my RGB LED and my light sensor blocks to my code using a specific block. When I want to add my light sensor, I'll remove this so you can see what it looks like. If I want to add a light sensor, I click under my light sensor menu and I drag in the block under start that says set light sensor to new Sam light sensor. I can add any other blocks doing that too. Say I wanted to add a heat sensor. I would pull in set my heat sensor to new Sam heat sensor, etc. But I don't need a heat sensor for this one. You can see here that I'm getting an error message. Sam Script, is very self-correcting. I'm getting an error here because this light sensor isn't exactly the same as this light sensor. This has a space, this has an underscore. It's kind of hard to tell, but if I hover over this, it'll tell me that it doesn't match. So I would just going to go to that drop down here and select the light sensor that matches whatever this matches up here. So this has to be the same as the block that's throughout my code. For example, if I set this to microbit, you can see it changes my whole code and gives me an error because I don't have a microbit added up here. This should be light sensor. Now that I have a light sensor and an RGB LED added into my code, I can press play on the left-hand side where I see the panel of blocks that's really similar to Sam Blockly. And I've got the same logic here. I've got my loop while This is the same as my repeat forever do. It's basically just saying if my logic is true, this is going to keep happening. If my light sensor value is less than 25, it's going to turn on my RGB LED and turn it to yellow. If my light sensor value is not less than 25, my RGB LED will be off. I can run that over here. If I drag my light sensor above 20 or 25, my light turns off. If I drag it below 25, my light turns on. This part of Sam Blockley, I'm sorry, I keep messing those words up. This part of Sam's script looks a lot like our project did in Sam Blockley. The biggest difference is just the way we add our blocks. We have to pull in a block from this menu here. The other big difference is that we can then change this over into a more traditional coding language of JavaScript or Python. I mentioned earlier, the course isn't necessarily going to teach your kids how to completely code in JavaScript and Python. It will give them exposure to both coding languages. And if you have kids that are ready for it, they can start completely typing over here, or they can start copying and pasting. They can also start with a starter system and try to edit it. Maybe you give them the challenge, hey, how would you make the light light up red instead of yellow? Well, the kiddos can analyze the code, find right here that the color is yellow, and they can see, oh, it's written in all caps. If I wanted this to be red, I wonder what would happen if I selected the word yellow, wrote red in all caps here, and pressed play. Look, now my light is red. I can use that same logic to change my light to blue, or maybe to make my light less bright. Maybe I want to put it at 70 instead of 100. So it affected the brightness of my light and the color of it as well. The cool thing about this is that students can also pull blocks over into their script-based code if they're not quite ready to code from scratch yet. Let's say they wanted to make their light flash different colors, right? They could drag in different blocks and say, pause right here, pause after you turn blue, and then turn red. Maybe they can test out copying and pasting a code. They can start editing it. I will admit that I'm a kindergarten and pre-K teacher, right? This is not my strong suit, but we have to let our kids have the opportunity to connect and to make those connections and to try different things and take risks. Maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it will. If I press play, I would assume it's going to pause for 100 seconds and then turn red. And if it doesn't turn red, I know that I did something wrong and I have to go back and fix it. I should have set it to less than 100 seconds so we could see easier and not just sit here and wait for 100 seconds. But it allows students to test out different codes and to try typing in different languages. Then I can go back to blocks as well and see if I made any mistakes. Clearly, it did not change to red after 100 milliseconds, right? So I did something wrong. Maybe I want to delete these blocks of code and start over. One more thing to note is that about Sam script right now is that it's currently not saving to the cloud. That's why it's on its own separate little page at the moment. Once it's ready to save into the cloud, it will be integrated into the main Sam Studio page. But my tip is that if you're using Sam script with students, or if you're planning to, and your district is the kind of district that like resets their computers every night, that would make them lose their projects. We expect to have an update on that within like a month for y'all. But in the meantime, the projects are saving locally to their devices. And that means if their device resets, then they'll lose their project. What I've been recommending to people is that if students have a project that they're sustaining work on, after they're done for the day, you click this little save icon to download it to your computer. Then you can drop this into Google Drive or Outlook Drive, whatever your school uses. And then if they lose the project, all they have to do is come in here and import it like that. And then they can save any old projects and make sure they're not going to delete. That would also come in handy if they're using shared computers, like in a computer lab. And then you can see my project saved right here, and I can go back to the regular Sam Studio page. This table just shows some of those differences that we've talked about today. I'm not going to read through that whole table. This is more here for your reference when we send out the slides. But I want us to have a little bit of hands-on practice now. Or we're going to take a look at this first. So the first platform that we talked about is Sam Space, which most of us are familiar with. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about Sam Blockly. I'm showing you some different blocks on the screen right now that come from Sam Blockly. I just want you to take a moment to reflect. How do these blocks compare to Sam Space? How do you think you would do the same thing in Sam Space? Right? For reference, this one up arrow is pressed over here. It's a lot like the key press button in Sam Space. Does anybody have any ideas to put in the chat or to speak out loud? How would you make something in Sam Space wait for 2 seconds? Or repeat after 2 seconds? Or how would you set your motor speed in Sam Space? That's okay if we don't want to type in the chat or talk out loud. I get it's the end of a long day. Most of you probably have kids all day. But these are just to show you some blocks in Sam Space. See, Sean, I gotcha. We repeat with the interval block in Sam Space. Thanks. Same with this repeat 10 times, right? Every however many seconds, we can make it repeat. If we're looking at our set DC motor speed block, right, in Sam Space, it's really easy to set the speed of a motor. All we do is click our motor and click the speed this way, or change the speed with the slider. So most of the blocks in Sam Space and Sam Blockly are interchangeable. I will say the one block that works a lot better, or the set of blocks that work a lot better in Sam Space, is the sound player. There's not really a sound player in Sam Blockly, there's just the buzzer. So if you're going to do a lesson like Monkey Ecosystem or compose a song that really relies on the sound player, that's better in Sam Space. The rest work really well in Sam Blockly and in Sam Script. If you haven't tried to figure out a car in Sam Blockly or Sam Script, it's a very good challenge. I tried to get myself to figure out how to do a car in Sam Script, and I got like 80% of the way there. I couldn't make it turn left or right. I had to get some help from a colleague, but it goes, right? So Sam Blockly, just an overview. Blocks snap together like puzzle pieces. It usually takes more Sam Blockly blocks to create a system than it would in Sam Space. We're going to take a look at this system here on my screen. You can see I've got a light sensor and an RGB LED set to blue, and a space, a key press button, and a DC motor. I'm going to give you like 3 minutes. It's going to be quick to pull up a Sam Blockly project and see if you can replicate this same thing inside of Sam Blockly. So can you create a light sensor that's connected to an RGB LED in Sam Blockly and make your light light up blue? Can you connect a space bar to a DC motor so your motor runs when you press the space bar? I'm gonna set myself a timer for 3 minutes here, and then I'm gonna come back and we'll chat, see if anybody got there. No pressure. If you're feeling like a real challenge, you can try it in Sam Script. While y'all figure that out, Olivia, I just saw your email. If you go into Sam Studio and filter for this Creators STEAM course, those are the lessons that use Strawbees. And I can send you a link later too. Okay, just about 3 minutes has passed. Any thumbs up? Did anybody think they figured out this system in Sam Blockley? Or part of it? All right, we'll take a look. Saw Sean shook his head no at me, and Karen was laughing when I asked, so we'll see how it goes. But the system here in Sam Blockley is pictured in the bottom left corner. Sorry, I do know my left and my right. We basically just have to set up two side-by-side systems. We tell the one, I can pull it up here. We would open a Sam Blockley project. Our first one, we first have to add our DC motor and our lights and our light sensor, because those are the three blocks, and that's how we get the menu. Our motor is spinning with the press of a button. So my start is when my button is pressed, or my space bar. When my space bar is pressed, I want my motor to spin. So I can just drag this in and set a speed. So now you can see if I press run, when I press the space bar on my keyboard, over on my little simulator, my DC motor spins. Easy peasy, then I can stop. For the light sensor, I want my light sensor to turn on, or I'm sorry, I want my light sensor to turn on my RGB LED, and I want my RGB LED to be blue. So I can come in here and I can say, here's an event. When my light sensor value changes, I want to set my RGB light color, my RGB LED color to blue. Side note, the difference between this block and this block is that this one here, the one that's I have blue right now, is the color of the actual light. And this block over here is the color of like the outside of your RGB LED. So I want my light to change blue. Did I miss anything? Let's look. Oh, and I want my my RGB LED brightness to match my light sensor. So my RGB LED light brightness, instead of setting it to 50, I'm going to set it to get the value of my light sensor. And then I press run. Now you'll see my RGB LED is going to be connected by my light sensor, or controlled by my light sensor. It's getting brighter and dimmer over here as my light sensor senses more and less light. And then my my DC motor moves with my space bar. I'm curious, did anybody try and get anything close to what I came up with? It's okay. It's a learning experience, right? And the how-to is here as well. In Sam's script, we can do those same things, but I'm going to just give us a little bit of extra background information here on Sam's script, just so you can see and use these visuals for your students. Actually, I'm going to back up a second and say these slides here from my Sam Blockley slides, this one, and these things to share and this challenge come directly from a lesson for students. It's the 3rd through 5th grade starter activity called Discovering Sam Blockley, or Exploring Sam Blockley, Introducing Sam Blockley, something along those lines. So these are actual lessons that are already created that you can do with your students. These Sam script slides come from the starter unit in the 6 to 8 STEAM course. So if you want to introduce Sam script to your students, I highly recommend looking at lessons like 6, 7, and 8 in the middle school STEAM course, because they will introduce what is JavaScript, what is Python, where is my workspace, what is my console, what are different coding languages. and it does a good job. It has a description of the difference between JavaScript and Python. Java's more web development based. JavaScript, sorry, is more web development based, where Python is more data science based. Game development can be done in both JavaScript and in Python. Same with robotics. So there's a visual that explains the differences for students between those two coding languages, as well as block code. In Sam's script, projects can look different. So here on the left side is that same smart light system that we had earlier, but here's what it looks like in JavaScript and in Python. And we could just see the similarities and differences here. I'm not going to make us go through that all right now. As a challenge, this comes from the lesson. I'm not going to make us do it right now because I know that we were getting into Sam Blockley and spending some good time there. As for a challenge for yourself, this also comes from that, I think it's the 8th lesson in the first unit of the 6 to 8 STEAM course. We give kids a JavaScript code and ask them to try to build it in Sam script using the block-based code. So it's getting them starting to think about how this code matches blocks. And then they can start learning, oh, hey, here's why I need to learn block code, because it directly translates over. You can see here, the first things that we're adding, even if we don't know exactly what all these lets and equal signs and parentheses mean, I have no idea why to use these parentheses or these brackets, but I can assume that here I'm adding a microbit. I'm adding a slider. I'm adding an RGB LED. Here's that logic statement that we've already seen. While true, and then we've got that if-then statement. If my pressure sensor is less than 50, I'm going to display a shape on my microbit, a square. I think, oh no, a small heart. Sorry, I can read. And it will be red. If my slider value is less than, or is greater than 50, so if this logic is not true, my microbit will display a bigger heart and it will be blue. And you can see here, this is what that same code looks like. If my slider value is less than 50, then on my microbit display a heart. And this is our beating heart system. If anybody's seen it, I can show you what it looks like. I think I have it. I might have made a promise too quick. I might have disappeared. A beating heart, there we go. Oh, don't need that. So over here we have a slider. If my slider is above 50, it's going to turn blue and my heart will get bigger. Below 50, it will turn red and my heart will get smaller. So it's simulating blood flowing in and out of the body. It's from a lesson on the circulatory system. This lesson's traditionally done in Sam Blockley, but we can see that same thing done in Sam script. As far as choosing what's right for your students, I want to remind us of that progression again. Sam Space is going to be using flow-based coding. It's ideal for students who are new to coding or students who are new to reading, whether they are kindergartners or 8th graders or high schoolers. In Sam Space, we do flow-based coding and we use it throughout almost every single one of our courses. Flow-based coding is pretty unique to Sam Space. It is in a lot of our courses, as you can see there. Our K5 STEAM course, our STEAM 5e course, our new K5 interactive STEAM course, that creators STEAM course that I was talking with Olivia about that uses Strawbees, our maker course, and our new Art Kit Smart Design Pack. Sam Blockley is used for us in between grades 3 through 8. It's a foundational part of our Learn to Code course for grades 4 through 8. It's more of a computer science-based course, but it's also used in our Creators Coding series, our Maker series, and it will be an option for the 3rd through 5th grade interactive STEAM course. So if you teach upper elementary, that's something that's going to be built in for you and your students to start trying this year if you want. No pressure. And then Sam script for us is currently only built into our 6 to 8 STEAM course. And as an extension of that, our Art Kit Smart Design Pack. However, we do anticipate to release maker design challenges and things that go along with Sam script as well. Generally, if you can do it in Sam Blockly, you can do it in Sam Script. Sam Script just tends to be less smart than Blockly, in that Blockly kind of does some things behind the scenes to make it easier for kids, like the block adding process and having already built variables that say, when I press the up arrow, do this. Whereas in Sam Blockly, you would have to build that by yourself. So Sam Blockly, or Sam Script, sorry, is a little bit more complicated, less scaffolded. Let's take a second to stop and think before I jump into the last part here. Just note where your students are now and what the next step is. Maybe think, where do you want to see them go at the end of the year? And how do you plan to get them there? So knowing that most of you are familiar and have been using Sam Space with kiddos, if you want to type in the chat what you're hoping to do for this year, or you can put it on your survey too, when we do that survey in a minute, where do you hope to see your kids at the end of the year? Type it in the chat, come off mute and shout it out. Ignore me and that's okay. Send your CSM an email and tell them. Knowing this info will help us support you throughout the school year so that we know, hey, you want to try Sam Blockly for the first time? Great. Let's provide some extra support to your building. Ooh, I'm excited to help get those fifth graders into Blockly, Sean. There, you're the only one in here that's actually my person. Let's see. Oh, Marty was in here for a second too. It's like the rest of you, I'm happy to help. You also have great CSMs in your regions too. As we wrap up, I'm just going to give you a couple of reminders. If you're ready to introduce Sam Blockly and Sam Script, there are already lessons created for you. There is a great 3rd through 5th grade starter activity inside of the new interactive STEAM course. If you go to the Content Hub and go under, let's go to 3rd grade. And I'm going to click Interactive STEAM. This lesson right here, called Exploring Sam Blockly, is a lesson that's designed to take kids from Sam Space to Sam Blockly. It's already created for you. You can use this interactive lesson with your students to start introducing Blockly to them when it's brand new. There is also a course called the Learn to Code course that has its own starter lessons. It's designed for 4th through 8th grade for our computer science course. These also introduce Sam Blockly. And I'll also say that last year I created STEAM starter lessons that use Sam Blockly. So I can send those out to you as well, or you can send me an email if I forget and say, hey, Alyssa, what about those STEAM lessons that introduce Sam Blockly? And I'll send them your way. But I've got your emails too, so I'll make sure to send that if you want that. And then for Sam Script, to look for those, you would go under the 6 through 8 interactive STEAM course. And you could scroll down to this unit here called Welcome to Sam Studio Teacher Resources. You can also find the same thing here under this teacher resource pack. But you'll be able to look at Unit 1 here. Oh, wrong button. You'll be able to look at Unit 1 here and find the lessons that introduce Sam Script, both the block-based side of Sam Script and the script-based side of Sam Script. So those are lessons to try if you want to introduce Sam Script to your kids. There are also several videos in the Resource Hub that teach you how to pair and how to use each coding platform. So I linked to the Resource Hub here and the different pairing anchor charts because pairing is slightly different in each platform. Before I wrap up this and give you some next steps, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Thank you, by the way, for putting your reflections and your goals in the chat. Any big questions for me before I get to the last part? Right, as you think of big questions, or as you just said, listen to me, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. So for those of you that are watching the recording after the fact, I appreciate you for joining. Please make sure to reach out with your customer success rep with any questions. And have a good night.